Will things truly be different this time? Or will Brazil stay in the black box of developing markets? It's the question that everyone is asking. We are comparing black box with hotel from the Eagles song Hotel California.
Welcome to the Hotel California.
It is rather simple to check in, but it's somewhat difficult to check out completely. The majority of rapidly expanding economies go into what is known as the emerging market black box, where they continue to swing without ever fully developing into a highly developed nation. Economic, political, financial, social, or environmental tragedies are the constant obstacles that keep them from moving from the developing market black box into the developed country box. It's all related to Murphy's Law. So, why can't Brazil escape the developing country's black box? Let's find out. We better understand the strength of Brazil's southeast core and the natural resource base of its northern periphery by looking at the geographical link between the core and peripheral. This explains the general structure of its economic geography, but there are some main regions to take into account that add to our knowledge of the country's geography: the northeast, the west central region, and the south. It offers a wide variety of landscapes, yet each has certain characteristics that set it apart. During the colonial era, plantation agriculture flourished along the shore, which serves as the anchor of the northeast area. After being set free,
Finally, actual freedom!
African slaves formed the majority of the population and served as the main source of work. In this agricultural zone, different crops are grown inland where rainfall is less, while sugarcane is still grown by the shore. Over 50 million people live there. Sadly, they live on the breadline. The economy centred on agriculture hasn't been able to provide this vast population with the quantity of employment opportunities needed. People there live out of a suitcase. They move to main cities in search of work and opportunity. This tendency is what gives rise to the self-built dwellings found in Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo's favelas. And here come the milestone around Brazilians' neck. We will talk more about it later. Since the latter half of the 20th century, the west central area has been expanding for development and has since seen significant developments in industrial farming. Huge Cerrado grasslands are being cultivated in this area and turned into expansive cotton, grain, and soybean crops. The expansive Mato Grosso Plateau, which nearly completely encircles the largest state in the area, is located in the northwest of the Cerrado. This plateau is primarily covered with savanna and scrub woodland. The savanna areas have historically been utilised for cattle grazing, although additional land has recently been cultivated for agricultural purposes. It is like Brazil's whole west central area is the enormous breadbasket. Infrastructure and transportation networks are necessary for industrial agriculture in order to get harvests to market. But the government hasn't developed infrastructure at the same rate as the private sector has been increasing industrial agricultural output. It is like the Brazilian government is only scratching the surface of the development problem. There is a great deal of potential for future agricultural growth in this area. One of Brazil's wealthiest regions is the south, which has benefited greatly from agricultural endeavours. A few of the highly developed economic activities in the area are farming. The region is also endowed with natural resources, such as coal that is transported north to the major cities for production of steel. Seems like they are on the gravy train, right? If you like this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Brazil's quest to become a superpower officially started much earlier, with its declaration of independence in 1822. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day. Its collective identity is derived from several factors, including the country's large size, ethnic and racial variety, racial mixing, and its distinctive language. Brazilian Portuguese differs greatly from the Portuguese spoken in Portugal and other African nations, as well as from the Spanish spoken throughout the rest of Latin America. Its modern history started in 1808, when the Portuguese royal family relocated their whole court of 15,000 people to Brazil to avoid Napoleon's attack and maintain the Portuguese Empire. Rio de Janeiro has since evolved into the capital of Portugal. It was elevated to the rank of kingdom inside Portugal in 1815, and it gained independence 7 years later when the Portuguese regent Prince Dom Pedro declined to follow his father's lead and returned to Portugal, declaring independence. Prince Dom Pedro must have worked his fingers to the bone. During World War II, President Franklin D. Roosevelt of the United States believed that Brazil deserved to have a permanent seat on the UN Security Council when the organization was first established. But the US government opposed the notion. To several Brazilians, this demonstrated evidence of a plot by the superpowers to impede its advancement and worldwide recognition. They are like a young Turk. Brazil, like other nations in Latin America, frequently opposed American imperialism in its different manifestations, but rarely completely. Following the financial crisis of the late 20th century, a significant shift occurred in 2003 with the election of President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Silva started strongly disagreeing with US neoliberal ideas in the program of the IMF and the World Bank, and pushed for more South-South collaboration with other Latin American countries. Robust economic development, an export economy, and the advancement of standards were all made possible by the government. After structural changes were made, there was a significant decrease in severe poverty. But still, it doesn't seem like an economic paradise. Brazil's remarkable thing isn't its growth, but rather the speed at which it's grown in such a short amount of time. Their GDP increased by a factor of 5 in just over 10 years, from $0.5 trillion in 1999 to $2.6 trillion in 2011. In terms of yearly percentage change, there have been extreme fluctuations due to years of significant growth, combined with the crashes from global events such as the financial crisis, COVID-19, etc. Are we playing a game of snakes and ladders? However, nobody can predict with certainty where this nation will end up in 10 years. How quickly and how long Brazil can grow is the main question. Closely forecasting its economic trajectory is difficult due to several factors. For instance, there are significant issues with inadequate infrastructure. Transportation is especially important for a region of this size. When combined with extreme poverty and crime, a shortage of availability of healthcare leads to a serious infant mortality issue. It's like an entirely different scenario than those presented in investment fund brochures for Latin America.
You lie, dog!
Its future development wellness will be determined, amongst other things, by how it manages its saving investment balance, which is now out of harmony with its demands for growth. The nation has to depend mostly on foreign investments since it doesn't appear to have sufficient local savings to sustain the level of investment required to sustain strong growth rates. It is a duty bound.
Let's do this.
High interest rates, which are usually around 10%, are another problem plaguing Brazil's saving investment balance. Should capital flow from outside the country decline, or should the government there realise it is harder and harder to support loans to domestic business, these factors would impede future growth. Keep an eye on how Brazil handles this investment savings balance, since it will be a crucial sign. Here is a more dark side of this country. Brazil has one of the most important rates of inequality of wealth among the world's 10 most populated nations. Due to the South's substantial contribution to its thriving economy and possession of a sizable portion of its currency, there is an inadequate distribution of wealth there. As obvious as the separation between the city and the countryside is the extreme disparity between the rich and the poor. Its periphery of larger cities, Rio de Janeiro in particular, has a distinct distinction due to the prevalence of uncontrolled areas, or slums, known as favelas. In the year 2000, 35% of the urban population lived in favelas. The first slums were built using stolen resources, such as pieces of wood and waste. The houses eventually received upgrades and are strengthened with sheet metal, brick, and cinder blocks. But the World Bank claims that they are still far from adequate living conditions. Favelas began to expand between the 1950s and 1980s. Rugged property hit rural migrants as the price of limited land skyrocketed and people moved from the countryside to the city. In the favelas outside of Rio de Janeiro alone, the population grew from about 170,000 to over 600,000 over this time. Concentrated poverty is found in favelas. Over 50 million Brazilians don't have enough to live on. Families with an income of about $300 per month make up the majority of these 50 million people. It is like inequality is Brazil's Achilles heel. Even the IMF cautions now that inequality has a negative long-term impact on economic stability and growth. Economic growth and the ability of the people to consume are directly related. As Chile and Colombia can witness, societal disparities can rise to civil upheaval. Additionally, they deprive nations of their population's creative and productive potential, which is a crucial source of future riches. Seems like Brazil is keeping up with the Joneses. Reduced productivity will result from a lack of human capital. No surprise in that. Budget cuts for education and school closures brought on by the pandemic, which predominantly impacted low-income students, are also likely to contribute to future disparities. During the pandemic, the proportion of young Brazilians who were unemployed or not in school increased from 20% at the beginning of the decade to 29%. Bolsa Familia, a cash transfer program for extremely poor families, has assisted in keeping kids in school. Yet, families find it difficult to leave the program in the absence of employment possibilities. Most families live from hand to mouth. If the public sector is able to provide high-quality healthcare and education, then only the kids of present recipients will have an opportunity to end the cycle of poverty. The Brazilian government should nip wealth inequality in the bud. It needs exhaustive, long-term measures, particularly in the areas of education and digital inclusion, to counteract the damaging impact of inequality. However, coordinated action appears impossible on the eve of a continuing political and institutional instability. This continent-sized country deserves the eye of the world. The issue is whether it can maintain it beyond a Latin American public in the days to come. If it strives for a seat at the big boys table, then critical changes, plenty of hard work, and painful decisions must be taken within the next 10 years. Brazil will continue to be the economic powerhouse of the area unless a real miracle takes place. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons to receive more content. See you in the next video.